Well, hello everyone. Here to show you the each portfolio case color activity right here, and basically it's basically like a case. If most of us are familiar, it's like the word portfolio, and basically that it's like for portfolio that it's basically like a portable. Like is if you want to call it maybe a booklet or a binder that keeps stuff information organized, such as say our past, and then past education, along with other important resources, office requirement, and of course classroom information. And what I went ahead and drew right here is some examples right here are of some students, and I'll go ahead and work right here is work right here is with the blue, and then along with say the pink type color. But you have right here is like between the boys and then the girls. I'm like, yeah, go ahead and a little bit of blue right here is like represent like for between the boys and then the girls. It would be lined up. It's like it's in the classroom though. But for the most part, is knowing about why is it that for the most part, most of the time, why we have like a portfolio, and a portfolio that basically that why do we have like which calls like a online information based on our education, and for wherever school that we went to is knowing that I'm like, yeah, that it's like if we know it's like the key definition for portfolio, that knowing it's like a case, a portable case that has information about maybe it's like our degrees and our study, and then a little bit of our experience and how well we did, that type of stuff. And I'm just drawing right here some examples right here of some students right here, and there will be about I would say about that. I went ahead and drew right here is about just see here 3, 4, 5. I went and drew about see your 5 other students right here. Is like that would be right there is like example right there of me, and I'm like, yeah, I can kick my foot up and down, that type of stuff. But anyway, knowing about it, if this was right here was the classroom I was in, and for knowing that for most of the time though that for most classrooms that they could contain. Most classrooms, more possibly could contain about at least maybe 15 or 20 students at the most, at least 20 of them, something like that. It's like schools I went to that knowing that I'm like, yeah, that hey, I'm like that there's about 8 students in the class, and maybe whenever we're in the kindergarten and first grade or something like that, and then there may only be about maybe 7 students, and then whenever we get into high school that there's about maybe 15, 20 students by the time we get into college or any other type of schooling, that we may see about maybe 100 to 250 or so students. But you see right here is that we had right here is an example right here of like a classroom. And for what we remember doing in the classroom, such as being it right here, and I'll go ahead and draw right here. This was right here with me. Go ahead and just use like let's see brown. Let's see the blue for like a brown type color. I can go ahead and maybe mix a little bit of blue and purple together just to kind of give us like a brown type look. But anyway, but you have right here. This was right here was an example right here of me right here. And if I would be inside of a classroom, no, and basically that if it's like what you call looking at a book, and then it's like the teacher would be at about right here with the handbook, and for knowing about that they would ask the students to please take out a piece of paper and write that it's like when they have a spelling test. If most of us remember that a lot of times with the teacher, whenever the teacher's desk would be at about right here, and I'm like, yeah. The way I would do it, I'm like, I've taken that what you call perspective drawing lessons, and knowing about, I'm like, start out with like with the footprint, but basically, if the teacher's desk were to be about right here, the wall would be at about right here. So yeah. So I'm like, the teacher's desk would be about right here on this corner, right here, and then from there, draw maybe some examples of some paper documents, that type of stuff right there. And knowing that the basic ideas about more like what the classroom would look like, and that knowing about you have right here is like a cabinet, and this cabinet right here could be, let's say, made out of solid wood, and knowing that the types of information that more likely keep in there, like anything that you may have learned in the classroom, would that be available online, say an online portfolio, and just knowing that right here is like working right here is like, say, with the highlights and basically any types of information that more likely that we may see on is like, say, on a portfolio, and knowing that with these highlights that could also represent, it's like so far as the person's name, like the name, and then as well as other basic types of information, such as for profile. And knowing that exactly about it's going to more likely be asking about the types of school that the school that more likely attended. It's like if it's right in here for the school, probably ask it's like the school that you attended and how many years, about to say for how many years completed. And for knowing about the whole part about, say, for online, for like a portfolio, that some of the stuff would more likely be online, to where if we were to put together a portfolio and then knowing about anything that you were maybe doing in the classroom, such as what you call it, maybe taking notes and then turn in your assignments and then stuff like that, and as well as learning the basics about that reading skills, and of course reading and writing, all those other subjects that we may take on whenever we were in school and along with college. But and then knowing about the type of job that more I get is knowing about that may require the type of skill that we learned whenever we were going to school, and knowing about that really this kind of reminds me of like a few IEPs. It's like the IEP, if it's an IP meeting or anything like that, knowing about, I'm like, it's usually you and your parents that go to the meetings, but then whenever you get older, that most of the time that they say that you will need to talk to the personnel, like the person over the phone, and then work it out to where that that to work at the out to what you gotta do, say, for in a classroom and to complete for that course, say, of the year, stuff like that. But let's just say though that this was right here was a classroom, and I'll go ahead and use right here the charcoal pencil has been used quite a while. But let's just say that use the charcoal pencil right here, and I like anybody say that if I'll go ahead and draw a shadow of my legs right there, and then kind of all relaxed. At the floor would it be at about right here, and then knowing that that the type of stuff that more likely that we would be doing, it's like in the classroom. And for most of the time, it's like with our portfolios, they are basically cases that contain a certain type of information. But if anybody were wondering though, I'm like, they're basically cases that contain a certain kind of information. But do they need to be online? I'm like that. If we talk about like for knowing about that, I keep thinking about that. It's like the way I usually would maybe word it is knowing about that. With most online portfolios, that really that for how making copies, if you were to be applying for a job somewhere, then for most of the time that they asked you about your history, about your work history, along with the schools, the type of education, what type of degree that you have, that type of stuff, and knowing about that the easiest way to how to make copies, and a lot of times that some meetings that maybe some parents, guardians, and whoever that that they go to meetings, and then sometimes it's like that the information that they had to bring, remember to bring with them, such as any information about this person, about their experience, and along with any type of information. And I know nowadays that like any type of enrollment, like for most maybe for in preschool or daycare or kindergarten, that some schools that may ask for specific information, that some would maybe say that it's kept confidential, like it's personal stuff, but let's just say though that any type of information that knowing about whenever we walk in the classroom, and then the types of things that maybe we may see whenever we're walking in the class, and then that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, for knowing what's like usually whenever students come back into school right around, it's like that month of August, maybe towards the end of July, they start school again, and knowing about exactly about what they see, it's like in the classroom, knowing about that you have I didn't draw all the details in the classroom, but let's just say though that this will be right here is maybe an example right here of a chalkboard. Anybody say that? Yeah, like you have a chalkboard about right here, and then right here you have right here is like an example right here of maybe like a bookshelf. I'm like, yeah, that I don't know if everything will be all close together, but I'm just drawing right here is the types of things that more likely that we see inside of a classroom. And knowing that any types of education that we had, knowing about nowadays that which I'm pretty sure that most classrooms that they have it to where that they had, other than bookshelves, that they had those those electronic devices to where all you had to do is just sign in. They give you like a a login ID, just to be able to log on, and then you'll be able to have access to your to your ebooks that way. And nowadays with technology, I don't know if all schools, but some, quite a few, most of them, I'm sure, are doing it like that, to where that they allow it to where that they give you, like, say, these electronic devices to where you log on, and talking about, I might say with technology though, but a lot of stuff that's going online. I might talk about between social security card, social security numbers and birth certificates, that type of stuff. But just knowing about really that for that how to control to where knowing about for who looks at the stuff it is. But on your hand, and knowing about that you have right here are say some parts say of like an online portfolio that it's basically information about, like say maybe about you, that if the question goes by saying, I'm like, yeah, is everybody more likely, is everybody required to have one, and why is it good, why is it recommended for everybody to have one? And more likely though, the answer is more likely would be is that a type of portable case to where it contains information. It's most of the time it is organized. It has the information, it contains information such as if anybody were to ask for it, and then it would be right, it would be right there. And then knowing about, I'm like, yeah, who's responsible for keeping it updated? And then knowing, I'm like, well, most of the time it's usually the person, for who's if you're say that, yeah, for whose name it's under, and then knowing about the types of information about that certain person. If it's a student or a co-worker or anybody like that, the types of information that they would have in their portfolio. And knowing that, let's just say that one or two pages, one or two pages more likely contains information about where, what town that they grew up in, and as well as the things that they like doing whenever they were younger. And as well as one page it can contain about the years of schooling that they went to, and as well as their job history, and as well as their major, their degrees, and maybe if they want to go ahead and include like what's called like the automobile, the types of cars that they were driving, at one point in a period of time of the year. But One thing's that more likely that they may say though that for most online portfolios that they usually say is do not include any type of security measures. Like a lot of times that they say that it's okay to put like maybe the date of birth, but other than the last 4 digits of your the SSN number, but other than that, for other security purposes, that they would ask you to, if anything, for an online, for like a portfolio, if it's going to be online or if it's in a book, that for any information is basically about education, and if anything else that you want to include. But just kind of basic information about something that's only going to take about maybe 15, 20 or so minutes of time. But anybody that may wonder though, Michael, if we're talking about portfolios, that for the most part that I keep thinking about, that if anything that if anybody needs to have access to any type of information, such as it's like if it's which calls like a between a girl, boy, man and woman, if they attended a certain school, knowing about the type of degree that they earned, while they were going to school, and as well as their study and their history about how many years, and about that for wherever job that they plan on taking later on. But in a lot of ways, though, that that for knowing about this, I had to go online, not necessarily, but they say that it's for each one of us having a portfolio is information about us that to make it easier for others, that if we were to go apply for a job and then they need to have a copy of something, then or they need to see something that knowing about, that they say that other than something that's stored inside of a cabinet, that ways of how to make copies for other people, and knowing about that if it's what you call as like a manager at a job site, or if it's going to be somebody that they say that we need to see some source of information about your schooling, and about doctors visits, appointments, from even though if it was about 3 or 4 years ago, Mike, anybody say that for any time that you may spent in the classroom, that knowing about Mike, if it's going to be jobs or if it's going to be meetings or anything like that, and that knowing about some source of information, and would I guess for the most part would maybe recommend anybody, if it was for a teacher, that if you had a teaching job for about 7 years, maybe 20 years, to have what you call like a portfolio, for others to be able to read a little bit about the teaching experience and about the schools, and maybe if it was the principal, or if it's a custodian, or maybe a librarian, if somebody worked as a librarian for many years, and have say a portfolio to where other people will be able to other visitors will be able to read about them as well, and knowing about for what library it was and what the location was, and but I guess knowing that for most portfolios, that if we were to think about it, is that with most sources of information, it's like say by calculation, it is type of mathematical calculation that we may take and know, is that if somebody need to have a copy of something, that a lot of times it goes by saying it's for a PDF file, or if it's a zip file document or anything like that. And knowing about that, that if we remember back in those old days, that you may had to go up to a copy machine, go somewhere where they can get a copy made for you or something, but more likely that they have it nowadays, that they say that making copies is pretty simple, that for whenever you for most online users, that usually that there's a way to open up a file, and then click, it's for sharing for emails or anything like that, that usually that there's what you call that technical way of how to make copies of something, and knowing about that one particular way more likely would be say by email attachment, but talking about is for copies, though, that if we want to go ahead and send a copy of something. Send a copy. If we want to go ahead and send a copy of something, a lot of times that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, has that been made easier with, like, say, like an online portfolio, and knowing about, I'm like, for most of the time with these what you call these portable carrying cases, that keeps a lot of your sources of information all in order, organized, all in one spot, something like that. And knowing that really that anybody that may wonder though, that I'm like, yeah, it's like that. We may not see no reason to why we need to have one, because of the fact about that you don't really have so far as education, we may not have a whole lot of education, but then on the other hand too, that knowing about, Mike, with most of the time with most portfolios, is that during the time that we spent in the classroom, is that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, each time that we spent our daily lives, knowing about for where we go in life, is that if it's a job or if it's any other type of career that we go to. And knowing about that, usually that they say though, that whenever you graduate, that knowing about that the whole purpose, but the whole responsibility for what the student does, is that whenever they earn enough credits to graduate, and then after they do graduate, and just knowing about like a portfolio is basically there just to kind of show that proof of information about your studying, and then about the years of schooling that you had. But I'm like, anybody that may wonder though, that I'm like, yeah, that it's like, for most portfolios, would they automatically update source of information, and usually that some may say though that if you're going to have an online portfolio, that the chances are that they say that, like, that you would more likely need to take the responsibility of updating the sites whenever that there's an update that has performed, that for knowing that any information about your schooling and about the job it is, that knowing that that basically that each one of us, if we were to have a portfolio, that we need to log on and update any specific information about about our schooling, and as well as what we learned, and then about the types of education, the types of jobs that we had, and knowing about that really that for other viewers, it's like that after class is over with, it's basically like talking about like that don't really necessarily mean that there ain't no connection between each one of us. Is that that really that after we graduate and after we move on, it's like with our lives, and like after we complete the years of schooling, and then find out that other students that we may have met at the school and at the university or at the job site or something like that, that more likely it would be I'm sure it would be a pretty good idea to have for each student, each person, to have a portfolio case, just for others to be able to look somebody up and say, hey, you remember me? Yeah. We used to, we were in science class together, we were in math class together, and, what's been going on, and then, so, really, that the whole important purpose about education-wise. And I don't know, I'm like, anybody that may wonder, though, I'm like, especially younger kids, that knowing about, are you allowed to look up information about the teachers, such as, that, with most teachers, though, that whenever you go to class, that there could have been a teacher, there could have been a teacher's name, and knowing about, I'm like, that by the time they teach you, some certain subjects, you say a course of the year, and then after about maybe 3 or 4 years, and then knowing about, I'm like, if they have a portfolio to where you can actually look them up, and then they actually have on there about 7 years or maybe 5 years of teaching at some certain school, and then they wind up getting a job somewhere else, stuff like that. But I guess that the whole question goes by saying is every type of experience that for like so far as education really worth going through the time and trouble just to kind of build, like say, is like a past history and knowing about. I'm like, yeah, that 5 years may not mean nothing because that maybe some students that may not think about you were not the best student, you were not the best teacher, stuff like that. But we ought to think about the whole part about the important reason. Truth of the matter is knowing about that the whole purpose about having managing these online portfolios, and the way I would think about though that we may be responsible for making sure that everything is correct, and a lot of times that's maybe usually what they say though. If it's either if it's anything that relates to like maybe the taxes, following your taxes, or financial aid, or if it's job sites, online applications, that they a lot of times that they don't really ask you too much about any sources of information, such as maybe your degree, but like knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that all the information that you provided is true at the best of your knowledge, and usually that's what they ask. It's like the above. Usually it goes by saying the above. See here, above information. Above information is true. Is that anything that you provide on any type of application or any type of a form of information, such as I say on a portfolio that they ask, it's like to make sure that it is true, that we don't need you don't need to be providing any type of false information. And if anybody were to ever were to ask, it's like, well, has it ever happened before to where that they were accusing you of any false information, such as that they understand that you had about that you had completed about maybe 5 years of education. You were with the job for 3 years, but then according to the resume that they always says about 2 years or something like that. I'm like that we probably say about, well, it could be corrected, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that they're going to maybe start accuse you of any false information, and they go by simple steps as knowing about you could be held on accounting as like perjury or something like that, for any false information provided to us. But the way I would think about though, that we may say about, yeah, that we all make mistakes, but on the other hand, and knowing about, like, any information that knowing about, really, that anybody may think about, we know what that's like to feel like that, if somebody were to, point the finger at you, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that you were going to that school, you were in that class for 2 hours a day, but then that the paperwork that may only say for 1 hour a day, let's just say that for most average, that they say that, yeah, for some classes it may go on for 2 hours, and then if you go to school for 7 days a week, and it says which I don't even know if it would even say that time, but more likely if you were part-time or full-time, going to that school, and the type of degree that you earn, for whatever that your study was, for how many years completed. And most portfolios that they say that contains information, it's more like easy, for easy access. And if most of us are familiar with like the login information and going to the internet site, but knowing about how to protect it as well, protect from fraud is. But on the other hand, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that with any type of information that basically that is collected, and knowing that for most of the time, though, that's like what for each one of us having to say a portfolio is basically knowing the types of information that more likely that somebody asks about it, that it's basic information about that you can easily, that either they can visit the site for where it's at, or more likely that they can receive a copy of it. And let's just say though that the situation were to come into where it's online, but then that they need some source of information about it, and more likely that anybody say that, well, then they can go in and contact the school about it, because the school would more likely have the the information about about the name, and then as well as you say that they go by say the day of birth. It's like for most security reasons that they say for the for the date of birth, and then as well as for the the year completed, for the year for which the year completed as well. And for the most part, knowing about the whole purpose about understanding about for online portfolios. But other than that, like for any information that more like it is collected, knowing about like is it really easier to it's like to provide some source of information for others to see. Instead of you had to remember each and every time to bring the information, that more likely it will be collected. From say from a portfolio, knowing about like just. If it's required by email or faxing, or if it's what you call like for online status, is knowing that any information that more likely that's already provided. That all you gotta do is really just show up for the job, and then good luck on the interview. Good luck for the next 2 or 3 years in the future. Stuff like that. But other than that, I talk about safety. Talk about the color activity right here is. For each portfolio cases, basically talk about as it explains about the important reasons is knowing about say for the best of education, as well as like whenever we graduate is like talk about is like for for each portfolio cases type of information that more likely that's available for knowing about the years completed, and it's like for best like for the future.